This is Lakeside. Lakeside was track of the day on December 3rd, 2022, and was my second map to get track of the day. It's a full grass map where the beginning is more of keep your gears, where the latter half is more full speed. It was reviewed by Nadeo with a rating of 4.4 at 78 votes and received mostly positive feedback. And today I would like to go through and review Lakeside, talk about what people generally thought of the track, and hopefully take the aspects that I learned from Lakeside and apply them to my future maps, so that way my maps can be better and maybe you guys learn a thing or two as well. So I did say the reception was mostly positive, but there were some negative things that people pointed out. But before we get into specifics, I want to go over what people generally thought of the track. So on Discord, there is a bot that goes and collects votes from various Discord servers. The way the voting system works is it goes from triple minus to single minus, and also single plus to triple plus, with the more minuses meaning the more negative and more pluses meaning more positive. The bot takes votes from a bunch of different servers, averages them out, and then gives a score. And so the Discord score on Lakeside was a perfect 0. That might seem really bad at first, but the negatives do actually get into the negatives. -1, -2, and -3. So the fact that there was a perfect 0 score line meant that the positives and the negatives canceled out. So the people on Discord generally had, I'd say, mixed thoughts about it. But if you're on a Discord server rating the tracks of the day, you're probably a bit more invested than your average player. And so I've kind of viewed Discord as more of the veteran player base, and on Reddit and other social media sites, it seems the reception for Lakeside was much warmer. So it seems the casual audience had a really good time with Lakeside, whereas the more invested players had mixed feelings. So some questions that I would like to answer is, why was the reception so mixed? What kept players from liking it, but also what made players like it in the first place? And I just want to cover real quick that there is no way you can make everybody happy. You can have the most perfect track in the entire world and it will not matter. Someone will not like it. So the goal isn't to create a perfect map that everyone will like. I just want to see if the reasons that people didn't like it, do I consider them valid enough to take into account for my future maps? Or do I think that they're just kind of being nitpicky and they weren't going to like the map no matter what? So heading right into the cons, what did people not like about the track? And it seemed the biggest complaint that Lakeside got was actually right in the beginning. So right in the beginning, there's this kind of S-bend with these rounded blocks. And my goal with that was to create a beginning that it was a bit trickier to get perfect gears. Since they're very easy to slide on, they're slanted, it takes a bit of practice to be able to get those gears cleanly consistently. Since if you get clean gears, you're going to be faster. So if you want a faster time on the track, you have to get good gears in the start, which in my mind made a lot of sense. People on map reviews seem to think it was okay. Even people during the warm-up, for as far as I could tell, didn't have that many complaints about it. However, if you've played Cup of the Day, you know there's this consistent problem, it's been there forever, where at the start of the rounds, there's a sound bug where you do not get your car engine sound for a few seconds. It'll just cut out and you won't be able to hear your car. And with that, it meant that players did not get the audio feedback during live rounds about whether or not they got the beginning gears cleanly. And that, yeah, that's kind of a problem. And since it is a problem that is, it's been there forever, I feel like maybe I should have thought about that a bit more. I'll go into more detail on that later, but that was the biggest problem that I saw, and I do kind of agree with it. I can see how it's super annoying and kind of frustrating to get that. And also, it seemed to be kind of tedious as well, where it was easy to mess up the gears. So if you were good enough to get the gears, it was just kind of tedious to get, whereas really new players didn't even understand that you could get the gears cleanly in the first place, and so it kind of felt like RNG with whether or not you're going to get a good start. And those criticisms I understand. I don't think that side of it is as important as maybe the sound bug, but something to keep in mind. You know, it kept some people from liking the track, so thought I would bring it up. So the next con that I did see was the fact for veteran players, the route was boring. And there's two parts to this. One is that the route is more simple. There's not really kind of a technical aspect, and even the full speed elements of the track aren't really pronounced. So the ways to gain time, once you have a baseline good run, the number of ways to gain time past that seem to be very limited. And it was really hard to just really differentiate yourself from the crowd and to mark yourself as a really good player. And I can understand that. You know, when you're good at the game, you want to show that you are good at the game. And so to play a track where that's not really an option, or maybe there's only 0.5 seconds you can possibly gain, I can see that as being maybe a little frustrating, maybe a little disappointing. And also the fact that grass as a surface is a little weird when it comes to more competitive maps that these veteran players are looking for. Since grass is very slippery, you can't really do tech or stuff like that. You there's kind of two options for grass. If you want to do a full grass map, you can obviously do kind of like what I did with Penguin Slide, where you have the more slippery sections that lead up into road drifts. You can do that with grass as well. But if you want to do a full grass map, you kind of have two options, where the first one is keep your gears, where you have turns and uphill sections, and the whole point of the map is to keep your gear. Don't lose your gears and constantly lose speed that way. And also full speed, where you just go as fast as you can. The track is built for going super fast. You try to get your speed slides, set up your wall rides, and all that kind of stuff. And Lakeside has a mix of both, but it doesn't lean heavily in either direction. It's more of a speed fun map with elements of both, and I can see where that can kind of reduce the challenge for a lot of players, and they find it kind of boring after a little while, and I understand that. I think that's valid criticism. However, one thing that I noticed was that grass itself, a lot of people just don't like it. I don't know what it is, but I saw a lot of people, the second they saw it was grass, started complaining that it was grass, how they hate grass. And I understand that some surfaces are more hated than others, like plastic or ice. I'm used to seeing that kind of hate for those surfaces, but I did not realize that grass had a group of haters that really don't like it. So that was surprising on my part. I was not expecting it, but I'm also not really taking their complaints too seriously. I listened to what they had to say, but some of it was just complaining that they just find grass as a surface boring for some of the reasons that I explained earlier. And for that, I was just not going to make them happy no matter what. So I wasn't too concerned about all that. And the last con that I really noticed, it didn't pop up too much, but enough that I thought I would mention it, was that the length of the track was too long. So Lakeside takes about 55 seconds to complete. If you want author time, it's 53 seconds, and world record is in the 52-second range. So it is a bit longer for track of the day standards, and some people were complaining that the map itself was just too long. I don't think I agree with that sentiment, mainly because we've had minute-long track of the days several times, and I don't really see that complaint pop up for those. It could be the fact that maybe they found Lakeside to be a bit boring after a while, so you really start to feel those 53 seconds driving it over and over and over again. Because some maps you drive, they're minute-long tracks, and it feels like you've been driving them for 30 seconds by the time you reach the finish. You're like, wow, okay, that's a fast minute. Maybe it's the opposite for Lakeside. Maybe some people thought the opposite of that, which might more tie into the too simple of a layout. But as far as the length itself, I think it's fine. We've had plenty tracks that are longer than this, so I'm not too concerned about that. I think anywhere between 40 seconds to 55 seconds is a good range for track of the day. So those were the big negatives that I've noticed, but what did people like about it? What did I do well? So I think the biggest pro is that casual players thought the map was really good. And I think that does tie into the simplicity of the track. Lakeside had a few elements that you really had to nail if you really wanted to do the track well, and those sections weren't really that difficult. It took a little bit of practice in order to get it consistently, like the gears at the start, or there's a speed check in the beginning right after the uphill as well. Then right after the reactor jump, the big uphill right turn took a little practice to get. And so there were certain elements of the track that were a bit more challenging that I could see a casual player, it being really satisfying to get those elements. So I think that's why there's the difference in opinion between the veteran and casual players. But one thing that I thought was really nice is that even people who didn't really like the map, the feedback that I got was that it just wasn't for them. And I think that's really fair. That means that for the people who didn't like the map, they could see why someone else liked it, but there just wasn't enough for them there. And honestly, that's really good feedback. I'll take that. It means that no one really, well, I mean, someone heavily disliked the map somewhere out there, but for the most part, if you disliked it, you could see why someone else liked it. And I think that was really cool. And as far as the route itself, I think it was pretty good. It flowed really well. I don't think there were any sections that really stood out as being out of place. And I had a lot of people note that they really enjoyed the route. They thought it was a good route. Had some interesting elements in it, mixed it up. They liked it. And so I think the route was good. I think Lakeside had a good route. And also a big step up from my first track of the day, Penguin Slide. I think the scenery for Lakeside turned out much, much better. I'm still learning. There's still some points to be improved on scenery, but I really like the way it turned out. The only thing is maybe I should have made the lake itself a little deeper. It looks good when you're driving on it, but on an overhead shot, the lake itself looks really shallow. It kind of just looks like a puddle. So maybe I should have made that deeper. But other than that, I really like the way the scenery turned out. I think I did a pretty good job on it. Definitely my best scenery job so far. And so taking those positive and negative points, putting it all together, what did I learn from building Lakeside and having it be track of the day? I think the key point that I'm going to take away is that I need to think about the sound bug when designing for Cup of the Day. I don't think it's something that people need to keep in mind all the time, but I am someone who enjoys building maps for track of the day. And part of that is Cup of the Day, where you are going to be in these tournaments, and the sound bug has been a consistent issue for basically years at this point, and I don't think it's getting fixed anytime soon. So if I am building for track of the day, then I need to keep that in mind, and I will try to in the future. And so one thing that some of you are going to know or notice if you have played through the Little campaign in my club is that Lakeside is a continuation of Little 4, also named Lakeside. So Little 4 is just the first half of the map. Once you hit the reactor jump, it's just a reactor straight into the finish. So everything after the reactor jump I added for this map. And I think one thing, it's one of my favorite tricks, is that when I'm not sure what to build, I'll just build a few 30-second maps, and then if I really like the route of one of them, I'll continue it. And so one thing that you can do is just build maps and then come back to them later, seeing what you want to change, because Lakeside was just like Penguin Slide, where there was Coral Snake first. I had a map named Little Lake, and the route was okay. I don't really want to get into it here. I don't want to spend the time on that. The route was okay, but just like Coral Snake, where I sent Little Lake through map review a few times and it wasn't quite getting the scores that I wanted, I let it sit and I came back to it and I basically started over and I came up with Lakeside, and I am very happy that I did that. So once again, just if a map isn't turning out the way you want it to turn out, just come back to it later. It's worked out for me several times now, and it's definitely something I'm going to keep doing in the future. So the next thing that I need to keep in mind, it did not hurt this track, but wherever there is a reactor, in this case a reactor boost up, there's going to be a way to exploit it. So the world record run is going right now, and you'll notice that they do something very weird for the reactor jump, is that they slow down and then they land on the edge of the S-bend. That way, it's called a zoop, where once you land on something, the reactor really pushes the car forward. And so the sooner you land, the sooner you get that forward boost. And that's what the world record really takes advantage of. I really don't mind that here. In fact, even if I had known about the trick, well, I kind of knew about it. I just didn't really know how to pull it off. And even if I knew how to pull it off, I probably wouldn't have done it for the author time, because I don't want that trick to be necessary to get the author time. But when you are building with reactors, you have to be careful, because there are so many other tracks. I'm playing a run off of one of the winter tracks that was insanely broken by reactors, and this happens all the time. So I didn't want there to be massive cuts, so I kept the reactor section to just a jump across the map, and then I placed several checkpoints, probably one or two more than I really needed to, but I placed more checkpoints to guarantee that there wasn't going to be a massive reroute or cut with the reactor jump. When you're building with reactor, just be careful. Just be a little extra careful. And going off of Penguin Slide, pay attention to reroutes, which I really did here, and I think my extra work with that really paid off. So the next thing that I learned is that grass has haters. I brought this up a little bit talking about the cons, and this really goes for just about every surface, I guess, except for road. No matter what you do, there are going to be players that just don't like it, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can build the world's best tech map, but there's going to be the group of players that hate tech, and so they hate your map. Or the same thing goes with full speed ice, pretty much anything. And so the goal should never be a track that makes everyone happy, because that's not possible. The goal should be to make a map that probably a majority of players, or at least your target audience, and since I'm building for Track of the Day, my target audience is a majority of players, but decide what your target audience is, and then build a map that'll make them happy. Even if you're just building a map for yourself, if you are your own target audience, then just build a map that makes you happy. And don't worry about making everybody happy, because that's not going to happen. And for my part, I think I built a good track. It seemed that a majority of people liked it, and even people who didn't like it didn't necessarily absolutely hate it. They just found it a bit boring, which I'm perfectly fine with. I was a little disappointed with the fact that Penguin Slide got better reception than Lakeside. You know, you always want your next map to be better and better than your previous one. And I think in a lot of ways Lakeside is better than Penguin Slide, but not in every aspect, and that's okay. But before I say goodbye, I would like to point out my club again. Come play it. I've got quite a few maps here. I've got a campaign of short tracks, about 30 seconds long, still under construction. So if you grind out all those medals, I still reserve the right to change the track. But I also have full maps, including one or two maps that have not been Track of the Day, depending on when you're watching this. And also a weird campaign with maps that maybe don't work as well as my other ones, if that's more your speed. Yeah, come check out my club. It's the Struggle Bus. I think it's an appropriate name. And of course, sorry, I have to get the YouTube stuff out of the way. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you want to join me on this journey of being a better Trackmania mapper, then go ahead and subscribe. I do want to make a lot more videos going over more mapping specifics and really just how to start mapping in Trackmania, because there's a lot of things that you can do and it can be a little overwhelming, and I want to go over just how to get started, how to really just branch out from being a beginning mapper, because I'm trying to do that myself. So if you want to come along on that journey, don't forget to subscribe. And if you have any thoughts, don't forget to comment down below. You can tell me what you thought the best tip was, what you thought of Lakeside, maybe some lessons that I missed, maybe some tips, you know, all that good stuff. And now that is out of the way, I want to thank you guys sincerely for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. I really do appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I wish you luck in your mapping journey. Bye!